the dread that he's not going to love you back. It's not funny. It's funny for the audience to look at. The internal experience of being in love is that it's not funny. No, it's not like that at all. I mean, the dread of being rejected is so...
It was the owl that shrieked. The fatal bellman which gives the sternst good night. He is about it. The doors are open, and the surfeited grooms do mock their charge with snores. I have drugged their possets, that death and nature do contend about them, whether they live or die.
Who's there? What's up?
Alack, I'm afraid they have waked. 'Tis not done. The attempt and not the deed confounds us. Hark! I laid the daggers ready. He could not miss them. Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done't. My husband.
I've done the deed.
We're always in a space. The space, we don't exist outside of space. So that's why it's such a huge component to our understanding of and to how we are in the world. You know, it was like really taking a risk, like to take a risk with how to shoot it, to trust that, you know, you'll learn that in the edit, but you just have enough knowledge that it could work and this might happen. And he said, but Sophie, the problem is, you know, you're an addict. And I thought, you're right. I'm addicted to the kind of creative risk because the discovery of it, I completely dissolve, I disappear. It's a kind of weird, it's like you forget yourself totally. Everything is what you're seeing. It's really important that you always feel you have nothing to lose. Well, you need to tell yourself, it doesn't matter if it's like, you know, we have to act as if we're free, even though we know we're not. It gives you that kind of sense of not holding back, you know, if you've just got nothing to lose. It's lost slightly now by the forces of kinetic editing and the sort of pressures to turn things around quickly. So you get more of this kind of kinetic, fast filmmaking that works on impact cutting. It's less about space. When cameras were bigger and heavier, they just didn't move in the same way. There's a kind of archaeology and an anthropology of filmmaking that's related to the cameras. I think that you are like, you know, in a dark room looking for a black cat that isn't there. I mean, it's dangerous insofar as, you know, you're kind of going to risk, you know, you start in the dark really, but you kind of get caught into the threads of possibilities and you get kind of woven into it gradually. I mean, people trapped in being hyper observed because of who they are or trying to become so observed. You're working with the cognition of the audience. That's also the other end of the scale of the care of it, for them to have their own, have enough space in it for them to encounter themselves in the work, in what they see, as much as what the subject is. And then it is like, it's the big wide world out there. It's the audience. I think about them so much. I want them to have the experience of the cognitive happening, their cognition. It is like, that's the beauty of what I try to say to the students that I work with. You're working with the cognition of the audience. That's also the other end of the scale of the care of it, for them to have their own, have enough space in it for them to encounter themselves in the work, in what they see, as much as what the subject is.
Worrying about meaning is not really useful after a while. Otherwise you start to get into really crappy things like, what's the meaning of life? And there isn't, you know, you just live it. I mean, it's... If you start looking for meaning, you're going to get terribly frightened and depressed because it doesn't kind of work like that. You know, the play's alive. It doesn't have meaning. Shakespeare doesn't mean anything. He shares life with us. What does your child mean? Does your child have meaning? Not really. Does that mean your child is meaningless? No. The deal is the child doesn't exist in a world of meaning or non-meaning. It's a living thing. And that's what a great work of art is. It's just, or a good performance is. It's just something you share. It's not code for something else.
Hey everyone, it's Andrea. This is a little special bonus because I will be talking with Sophie Fiennes tomorrow night after I get to watch her wonderful film Acting. And I hope you all will come and join us and watch this film. I've always loved Sophie Fiennes' work. She did one video, which I'll link to in the show notes, called Artificial Things, which I honestly think is maybe the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, or definitely top 5. For a lot of reasons, also for the subject matter and the play and so forth. But I find her work very moving, and I have for a long time. And so it's a real honor to be hanging out with her tomorrow. But also I want you to know about what the movie is about, because it's also really interesting. For those of you who love theater, this is just gold. It's such a treasure. And for those of you who don't know anything about theater or care, it's still wonderful. I'm going to try to explain it a bit here in a way that would work for anyone. But it's about it's about a theater company called Cheek by Jowl in London, in England. So some of you might not have heard of it. I'll tell you a little bit about it. And Declan Donnellan, who's written some really amazing books called The Actor and the Target and The Actor in the Space. And as someone who's talking about space all the time, this just means a lot to me, these books. And I'll try to tell you more about those, as this is just a very impromptu bonus episode, which is going to be kind of short. All those clips you just heard were from the movie, and also from a conversation that Sophie and I had, which was a couple hours long, and I will post later. Maybe I'll even add something more after I've seen the movie, and maybe we'll talk more. I don't know. It's all kind of a work in progress, but I'm just going to try. I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm just going to try to explain what I know a little bit about of the book, of the movie, of Declan Donnellan. And yeah, I think one way to get into this is just think about your own life a little bit. Think about performance, and how do you feel like you perform in your daily life? Think about something you did today or this morning or last night, even if it was just like making tea, or if you caught someone's eyes, I don't know, while you're riding the subway, or maybe you told someone a story that you've told a lot and that you tell for some certain reason, maybe expresses something about you, or maybe you told it a little differently because, you know, you're talking to someone who hadn't heard it before. These kind of things are not performance in a sort of pejorative way, as if you're being false or pretending or something like that. But there is a way we kind of are acting or performing, even as a way of being even more honest than we can be. I mean, language itself and speaking can be a sort of performance, or at least this is what I get from Declan's way of talking about it sometimes, and this way he's bringing it into theaters. There's something about being alive and expressing and relating to people that already has something of acting in it. And sometimes you're most authentic in that space. It's not about performing in the way that you might think of that word, like being false. It's about performing yourself as you are. That's kind of hard.
Are you ready to elevate your leadership journey through exploring the wisdom of the ages? Subscribe to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast on all major podcast platforms, including Apple iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube Music. You can also find us everywhere else podcasts are available. If you find value in our episodes, please leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. We need those reviews to grow, and it is the easiest way to help other leaders and lovers of literature discover this show. And thank you for your support.
It's kind of a holding paradox kind of idea, I think. But let me tell you also a little bit about Donnellan. He's actually one of the most celebrated theater directors in the world. For example, Ralph Fiennes, who is Sophie's brother, worked with him. I think that was his very first job. And so did many other people. A lot of actors have worked with him and really seem to appreciate and respect him more than just about anyone. You really see it and hear it in their voices when they talk about him. Also, Jeremy Strong has, famously said that his book and his work is, his most favorite thing as an actor. And Donnellan and his partner, Nick Ormerod, founded Cheek by Jowl in 1981. And Nick is super talented too. He's doing set designs and all kinds of amazing things. I encourage you to go find out more about, because they founded it in 1981. It's been over 4 decades. That's like 400, 500 cities they've worked in because they like to travel. They've won all sorts of awards. The Golden Lion of Venice, for example, is one I remember. And also in Moscow, the Stanislavski Prize. I made a note here that Le Figaro described Donnellan as Irish in origin, English in education, European in culture, and universal in thought. So that tells you a little bit about him. I think he even trained as a barrister, as a lawyer, but then he ended up working in the theater. So quite an interesting person here. And he's also, as I said, written 2 books, The Actor in the Target, which came out in 2002. And that's the one that went viral because of a lot of reasons, but also Jeremy Strong, the guy in Succession, said he swears by it. And I remember that sort of went viral. It's in, 15 languages or something. And then his second book, The Actor in the Space, came out in 2 years ago, in 2024, probably around this time. And that's the one I'm talking about today because that's the one that this film grows out of or with or as part of. And it's not just about actors. It's about, as I was saying, performances. Like, why do performances die, for example? And of course, I think I see love in all of this. I'll probably bring that up, but it's not really part of the book, but this is Love and Philosophy. So, but let me just read a quote that I wrote down that's in Donnellan's own words, which tells you maybe better than what I've been trying to say so far. Human beings are actors. It is hardwired into our DNA. From toddlers playing make-believe to age-old pensioners sharing jokes in the pub, we need to perform. It's an essential part of being human. Acting starts early. We use it to develop our relationship with our mothers. We watch her and wonder, mirror her smiling and repeat the sounds she makes. She intones soothing noises. We copy her. We learn things by performing for her, and she performs for us. Does that mean we are lying to each other? Of course not. Performance is woven into the fabric of our lives. It's as natural and important to us as breathing. Performance is not merely a habit that humans keep repeating across millennia, languages, and cultures. It is more fundamental than that. Performance is what it is to be human. It is the operating system for life. End quote. So that's pretty strong, an operating system for life, but it's not a metaphor that he means lightly. If you read the book, you see what that really means, that we're already performing as a way to even kind of know ourselves and come into our own relationship with ourselves and learn more about ourselves. We do watch each other and we do perform for one another, and we perform one another even. And that's partly what's happening when we write books and read books and watch movies and have conversations. So I find this an exceptional human activity too, for those of you who are always trying to figure out what makes humans different. It's interesting that we can perform in this way and act, and there is something very special about it and something dangerous. So, I mean, it's a potent ability that we have here and that we do even without words, or, it's a way we do learn our words. We perform in order to even learn our language. So, but there's a kind of puzzle in this, because if we're such, natural born performers, then why is it so hard to be an actor? I mean, this is not an easy thing to be an actor, to be an actress, to get on stage and perform. It's hard to have an honest conversation, which is what you really have to do as an actor. So that's kind of strange too, because the best acting is actually this honest conversation, even though it's a performance. So I love this because I think this is really a great example of holding paradox. So it's hardwired, but it's hard. So actors suffer a lot in trying to get the performance correct. I haven't seen the film yet. I'm going to see it tomorrow, but I think it's showing these different sets of actors as they perform and rehearse Macbeth. But here's another quote that I wrote down from Donnellan. So in real life, most people can make a good stab at improvising their allotted role of father, mother, nurse, lover, and so forth. But give them a script and their performance rapidly dies. This is the basic problem we face in a rehearsal room. There is a series of black marks on white paper, a dead thing, and we need somehow to bring it to life, end quote. So that's cool. That's a great image, and I think that speaks to what I'm trying to say here. So when you start thinking about performance, when you put your attention on it, then something changes. And that's kind of what happens when we're trying to learn the craft of acting. This has always been something very hard for me, for example, but as I'm trying to learn this and study it, it's helping me do things like even this podcast, for example. But it's weird because once we start focusing on it, we have to learn it again, even if it is a natural thing for us. You can think about those conversations again that I was bringing up and how if you start thinking about performing them, they would change. They're always scripted in some way. You don't want to script them, if that makes sense, because then they lose their potency. So this is very, very interesting too. If you think about these conversations that are crackling with life, they're responsive, they're relational. they're a performance with the person. You're doing it together. You're in the performance. You're relating as things come. You're improvising together, but you're doing it in this way that's like very organic and real for you. How do you get that in a rehearsal room? How do you get that on a film? How do you get that in the theater? This is what Donnellan has helped so many people do. And he talks about it as being alive. Is it alive? I mean, that's how you kind of know, like, that's his question in rehearsal. So he can't really define what alive is, and he doesn't try to define that exactly, but it's interesting because he is after this question, which is a question that I'm thinking about a lot in philosophy and neuroscience and biology, of philosophy of biology, as you've probably heard, and if you've listened to any of my more philosophical talks like elsewhere. What is the body? What is being alive? And it's wonderful to come at it from a theater perspective because it's really getting me out of those old habits I've been in with philosophy and neuroscience and thinking of it from this artistic perspective again. Way back, I used to go to theater all the time and watch films all the time when I was younger. And I've sort of gotten away from it maybe in the past 10 years just because I've been so into the science. But coming back to it now is so refreshing, I have to say. I went to a theater thing today too, and it's just really wonderful. It's opening me again to this thing I think that he's talking about being alive, when he's writing about it in the book, The Actor in the Space, and which is part of, I think, Sophie's movie. And we talk about it too in our conversation. You probably heard some of it already in those little clips I just played. But so we know this. We know it from theater. We know it from dinner tables, phone calls, dates, performance. And we know when it's alive and we know when it's not. But you can't, how do you put that into words? That's kind of the journey of this book. And it's also something that he's been helping actors find and do for a long time, some of the ones you love most. It's not about like trying harder necessarily. It's about like finding this emotional truth in yourself. So you might think like if an actor is having trouble, then what they have to do is try harder and feel more and be more sincere and get to the depth of their feelings and this kind of thing. But actually thinking of it that way, Donnellan says, is really almost exactly wrong because it's getting you farther away. It's like, here's a great quote. Let me find. It's like scientists who are searching for life on other planets. So this is what he says. When scientists search for life on other planets, they don't look for living organisms themselves. Instead, they search for the conditions that life needs. For example, in our universe, water, oxygen, carbon, and so on. They find life not by searching for life itself, but instead by looking for a space that could support life. So all life depends on context, ultimately on the space around it. Isn't that great? I mean, wow, I just love thinking about all these spatial ideas through that quote, which that was the end of it there. So you're not looking for the life, you're looking for the conditions that support it. You're looking at the space around. And this is what he's bringing to acting. So the actor is doing this. Isn't that an interesting take? He also talks about this like image of the child and the flower and how a child can sort of pick a beautiful flower and take it to her bedroom, but then it will wilt and die and she'll be disappointed. But when she's a bit older, she'll understand that this flower is like depending on its invisible things around it, its space, the roots, the sunlight, the healthy earth, water, whatever. You're attracted by the brightness of that flower and maybe you want to pick it and take it home, but actually it's the space around it that is the flower, because if you take it out of that space, then it's going to wilt. So that's something that you can also think about when you're thinking about space and acting and performing, and even the relationality of it. It's never, it's always in a conversation. My mom always liked Edgar Allan Poe, and I remember she had his books around. She probably still does have them at her house, but Donnellan also talks about the purloined letter as a kind of example of this. About that, like the police come in and they're tearing apart the house looking for something, and they're looking so hard that they don't see that what they're looking for is actually pinned to the wall. I don't know if you remember that story, but basically the idea is that sometimes we get so desperate trying to make something happen or find something that we don't actually notice that it's already there in the space that is us, that we share. That's a different kind of move to kind of shift your attention in that way. And I want to think about that a minute, because it's also something that I think is happening when we feel care or love or something like this in the truest way, right? Because then you're realizing that it's in the space too. I'm not sure, maybe it's pushing it too far to really think about this, but when we're thinking about performance and acting and art, I do think there's something about the spatiality that does connect to a caring space. And actually, Sophie and I talk about that because she really does that in her work. At least I really feel it. She really has this like caring space that's created that you feel, and you're sort of invited into it. And if you continue watching, by the end, you've you've experienced this different space. And Donnellan does that too, or he knows how to help people do that as actors. When a scene feels dead, then instead of putting like a whole lot of energy into it or trying to fix it, you sort of realize that you're not actually plugged in. He uses that plugged in. It's like, you're trying to fix the TV, but it's unplugged and you haven't noticed. So that's kind of what's happening sometimes when we're in these contexts and our performance isn't working. So the actor is like unplugged from the space. So he's saying you have to plug back into the space. You have to kind of sit there with it and fill into the space, the character's space. And that's just a perspectival shift that I think can be actually very healthy and important in life, outside, not only on the stage. But it's something I wanted to share with you because I think this also can help us feel into what we care about and what space around us is generating something that we want to be part of as that caring, and kind of re-plugging into that again, realizing that the space itself is holding this. Here's another quote that I wrote down. Maybe it'll help. Actors sometimes plunge past this first crucial step and instead valiantly throw themselves into acting, meaning each word sincerely, desperately, deeply indicating the slightest nuance and pouring energy into the performance. They can exhaust themselves and indeed the audience, and yet it still feels dead. The issue is rarely that they have failed to discover the right feelings or details or characteristics of the part. The problem is simpler. The actor hasn't done the imaginative work to create a new and different space for the character. Yes, although the actor has no option but to be somewhere, there in the middle of the stage, sweating, the poor character is nowhere. No effort can be alive if it happens in a vacuum. It's not just that the character is dead, the character hasn't even started to exist. So it's not that the character is dead, the character hasn't even started to exist. Until you plug into the space as an actor, you're not actually the character. And if we think of that in life too, sometimes we're so stuck in our head, or we're trying to think of like what we should say or what we should do or how we should perform, and we're like desperate to get some kind of outcome, when what we have to do really is like relax into our bodies and be in our bodies, be the space, plug in. And not only our bodies, but be in our bodies and then be in our bodies in that room, in that space. There's no effort that's like alive in a vacuum. In the same way, it's true for you in your conversations and in the rooms that you're in your relationships. And there's another kind of holding paradox sort of move that Donnellan also makes. And I really want to speak about that just like really quick before I go, because it's staying with me. This move is that he suggests instead of asking what a character wants, we ask what the character is trying to avoid. So that's another interesting shift of perspective that relates to also shifting into a perspective that's more the space. And I think it's really interesting. So like how are we reacting and influencing the space around us? Or how is this person, this character, doing that if we're the actor? Instead of thinking, what does this character want? We think about like, what are they moving through this space to try to avoid? What are the obstacles? He writes that the more dangerous and dynamic the space, the more alive the actor will become. So it's really this dynamic of the space that's making the character. So that's interesting too for some of you who might be writers or even thinking about making a play or something. This could help. So you're not rehearsing the aliveness out of it or writing the aliveness out of it. I know Nick tries to design the sets in a certain way so that it doesn't just like suck the life out of it. So it's all part of Cheek by Jowl in all ways. And I think it's kind of distilled in this one phrase, which is part of this book. And it's here it is. There is no acting, only reacting to the space. So that's interesting. He also often says that like none of this is true, but hopefully it's useful. So it's not like these are hard rules or something, but they're ways to get you out of your habitual way, maybe as an actor or as a writer or even just in everyday life, to think about this a little bit differently. Don't think of it as acting, think about it as reacting in space to the space, as the space. This being constituted by the context, which relates a lot to 4E cognition and all the stuff we've talked about here often on this show. I just wanted to bring it up, and I also wanted to connect it to this idea of care and the space itself and the relationality of that being the contextual possibilities for what we can do together as actors, but also just as humans trying to work on projects in so many different ways. I think we can all understand this a little bit and maybe take some of it to heart in ways that will help us if we feel like we're stuck or if we feel like we don't know what to say in some situation, think about, relaxing into your body and into the context and plugging in, because there is a kind of natural flow there that one can find. And it is a kind of performance, but it's at some point there's not a separation between the performer and the performance. There's the acting itself. So at some point you're acting, but that's action. You're immediate in your body acting. And that's why this word acting is so beautiful, which is also the name of this movie that Sophie Fiennes made with Cheek by Jowl, and that I hope you will come and see. And just to try to relate it for 1 second to philosophy, I was thinking about, being in the world. I was thinking about a Dasein and also I and thou of Buber, this genuine relation that's like preceding and constituting the action itself, the self, where I is coming into being and having this encounter with thou. And that is itself, that is that reacting in space, as space, to space. Or at least that's what's coming to mind for me here, that's being plugged in. I think that makes a lot of sense to think about the I, thou of Martin Buber and the care and being plugged in this way, this acting. So acting means something very different by the time you really get to this space where the space is between you as you is so real, and the other person's presence is changing you, landing you, reaching you. Kate Blanchett is a really big fan of all of this, of Cheek by Jowl, and she's been part of a lot of it. She's also been with the Fiennes family, which is an amazing family. I'm sure you know a lot of them and their work, but she calls this a hand grenade of a book, this one about the actor in the space. And I think that this film is probably something like that too, because it's really about presence, I guess. And there's a whole lot more that I'll probably have and know about it after I watch it. And I also can't wait to share my conversation with Sophie, with you. I hope if you're in New York City, you'll come say hi tomorrow, starting at 6:45 at the Quad on West 13th Street in New York City. It would be awesome to see you there. And I'll put some notes and things about all these books in the show notes or on the Substack. Let me know what you think, and I hope you're doing well out there and acting with your full presence and plugged in today, wherever you are. All right, bye.
I'm a jogger. I'm a murderer. It's difficult.
It is, but the difficulty is Macbeth's.
Yeah.
To actually, I imagine that very few people who murder people actually see themselves as being murderers.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure this thing out for myself. I'm trying to talk myself, like, I feel like I'm figuring this thing out for myself.
Yes.
He's up there. I need to get away from people. I don't want to confront more people.
No, but they're not people. They're another aspect of you. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're looking to,
Yeah.
Some people talk to mirrors.
Uh-huh.
I mean, crazy people, but
Yeah.
they're not that crazy. Or the person you talk to in the shower.
Yeah. Yes.
The audience that you see, they're an enormity. They're in the space, they're changing, they're going through thresholds, and they present a huge predicament. Because the predicament is they think you're mad and that you're deceiving yourself. They become this thing to convince that's really important. Convincing them is not a side issue.
If it were done when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly.